With Yu-Gi-Oh! Being a card game based on a game and a manga that also got an anime adaptation and then multiple sequel series, it's no surprise that some of the real-life cards reflect the anime. I want to cover some of the coolest cards that reference notable characters and scenes in various Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga and anime using their imagery and effects. They can either be one-for-one recreations or loosely based on something in Yu-Gi-Oh! Media, and joining me in this video is the real-life anime character herself, Judgment Meter.
That's me!
Now, let's read into the top 10 Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards based on the anime. Number 10, Symbol of Friendship. This is an iconic image to any Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan. It's right before Yugi has his duel against Kaiba to avenge his grandpa after Kaiba dueled his grandpa into submission. Taya has the group put their hands together and draws the titular Symbol of Friendship on them for hope and luck. For those who just watched the anime, this is based on the drawing in the manga, which was changed a bit in the anime. For the most part, when referencing the original series on cards, Konami will use the manga version if applicable. Also, the part of the manga when the symbol was drawn was different. It was still to remind each other of their friendship, and Kaiba was still the antagonist, but Kaiba had all of them in the middle of various death traps that the whole gang had to go through before they got to the various monster duels. So the symbol hit a bit harder since they were at risk of being separated, but they would have something to show that they were with each other at all times in heart. In a way, it makes sense why the anime would use a different looking face since it was a completely different scene.
That looks like the scary face from Ghost in the Shell or Cowboy Bebop.
What scary face is in Cowboy Bebop?
I don't know, it's the thing that like bounces around on the TV screens, like when Ed hacks or something.
That's not scary, that's funny.
I know that one, but there's also...
I know of scarier faces on hands.
No, not that. That is scary.
This card was initially released in a 2016 set known as Millennium Pack, dedicated to anime-adjacent cards from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, so this card was a cool addition amidst all the obsolete vanilla monsters that you would likely pull in that pack. The effect is a neat homage to the Yugi vs. Kaiba duel that followed the reference, where at its climax, Kaiba was able to summon 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons, and the odds were against Yugi unless he could draw all 5 pieces of Exodia from his grandpa's deck. Now the effect of Symbol of Friendship can only be active when it's drawn at the beginning of the turn, just like how Yugi had to draw the Exodia pieces, and the effect can only be activated if your opponent has 3 or more monsters on the field, just like how Kaiba had 3 dragons, and if that resolves, you can add any card from your deck to your hand, making it a true Destiny draw style card. Being able to add any card to your hand is a strong effect, but since Symbol of Friendship only works when it's drawn as your normal draw, it's just as much luck drawing this card as it is to draw the card that you would have searched, and you don't know how many monsters your opponent will have on the field. And if you draw it via an effect like Pot of Greed or Max C, you can't use it unless you find a way to shuffle it back into your deck to draw it regularly later, so it's a potential brick. In the end, this card really just exists for the reference, and that's fine. I also just realized that there's a bit of wordplay in saying that you have to draw this card of a drawing to activate it. Unintentionally clever. Number 9, Signal Warrior. So they made Yusei's motorcycle a monster card, and it's apparently a transformer, yet not a machine. If you know anything about Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, you likely know that there's a focus on riding duels, or turbo duels, that involve high-octane matches where both players are on motorcycles, and they have a few special cards that gain effects depending on their laps and other factors. While this plot point gets joked about a lot, the series still does traditional duels about a third of the time, and the overall plot of the first half of 5Ds was well done in my opinion. However, Signal Warrior's reference is based on turbo duels, so that's the focus of this segment. This card combines Yusei's D-Wheel, or Duel Runner, or just motorcycle, with those robotic warriors that he played that all had warrior in their name as if they were an archetype. I don't know anyone who loved those guys, but Yusei sure played them a lot. He loved summoning Speed Warrior. As a result, when turning his motorcycle into a monster card, Konami put it in that Synchro Warrior category, like Junk Warrior or Satellite Warrior. It doesn't have any archetype support, so it's just meant to be a synchro monster that exists for the fun of it.
He loves that bike. He loves that bike so much. Oh my god, all of his cards should be based on his bike. There should be an archetype based on his bike. He would love that card. He would sleep with that deck.
Its effect is a reference to Turbo Duels, where it copies the anime-only Turbo Field spell Speed World 2. Yusei also loved his Speed World cards. To emulate counters being put on Speed World for each lap, once per turn, you could add a signal counter on every face-up field spell and one on Signal Warrior himself. Then Signal Warrior can remove counters on the field to do the Speed World 2 effects, like drawing or destroying cards. Final note, its head is Yusei's helmet. It may not be your first choice to synchro summon if you can bring out a level 7 monster, but he's cool to look at and find Easter eggs on. Wait, does Yusei's helmet have the YouTube app on it? I hope he's listened to my videos. Number 8, Orbital 7. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, or Zael, the rival character Kaito, or Kite, had a comedic robot assistant named Orbital 7. He gave Kite someone to play off of when he was alone, acted as transportation, and was just a funny character when he interacted with Kite's rivals and eventual allies. So the card game just turned Orbital into a monster card for some reason. He was not a dual spirit companion in the anime like we've seen with other little buddies, and he wasn't a character who later became a dual monster in canon. Kite just made him because he wanted an assistant and he was a child genius, so Konami had no basis to turn Orbital into a monster card outside of just wanting him as one. I like how they didn't even change anything about Orbital's design when putting him on a card. Like, they turned Kite into a monster card, but they called it Numeral Hunter to thinly veil that this monster is legally distinct from Kite, but his outfit, body type, and occupation as a numbers hunter is exactly the same. With Orbital 7's card, you have a few anime references in the art and effect. Behind him, there's like an astral projection of his alternate form when he had to do serious things or just got angry. For his effect, you can tribute him to get a Photon or Galaxy card from your graveyard, which are the two archetypes that Kite played. And Orbital 7 has a mechanic that puts a "you got it boss" counter on him to raise his attack, in reference to him saying that to Kite in the anime dub anytime Kite told Orbital to do anything. In Japanese, he would say what translates to "yes sir," so they're called "yes sir" counters in Japanese. While this card wasn't really used in any decks, they retrained him as Photon Orbital, which had more uses in Photon and Galaxy decks. Since Photon was now in his name, it makes him more searchable in the deck. I also like that in Duel Links, when Kite uses an effect that sends Orbital to the graveyard to search, Kite says, "Orbital, sacrifice yourself for me and Heart," Heart being Kite's brother. That sounds really hardcore. I don't think Orbital's duties for Kite were that extreme in the anime. And shoutouts to Lilybot, or Abomi, for being another robot companion in Zexal that they just put on a card with no alterations. This was a trash bot that became a helper for the family of the main character, Yuma.
It's a friendly garbage can. Aw, friendly garbage can has a bow. No, maybe it's a shop vac. Lady shop vac.
Orbital fell in love with her and she showed feelings back, so her card effect allows you to recover Orbital 7 from the graveyard to go with his tributing effect, and then she lets you summon Photon and Galaxy cards from your hand, so she works with the other Orbital too. They also had children in the anime, and I don't know how that works. Is there something I don't know about robot reproduction, or did Kite secretly build those baby robots to make Orbital happy? That would be some wholesome headcanon if true.
She's sad in that picture. She doesn't like having kids. She thought it was a good idea, and it turned out to not be a good idea.
Number 7, Opening of the Spirit Gates. This card was always a bit odd to me since it referenced a big moment in Season 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, but it was such an overshadowed moment compared to the rest of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX's main villains. Where do I begin? This is a reference to the ceremonial pillars that released the Sacred Beast cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, which were 3 all-powerful monster cards that could grant their user immeasurable strength. Since it was the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX when the stakes were low and we were just getting into a new generation of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the Sacred Beasts were basically legally distinct Egyptian god cards, where they were technically different looking at their effects, but their color palettes and shapes were similar enough to ease you into this new Yu-Gi-Oh! Series with something familiar from the original. For main character Jaden, I essentially call it his tutorial Armageddon, where the villain gets his youth back and might take over the world, but all of Jaden's friends are there to support him. It's not as bad as the Armageddons of later GX seasons, like against Sartorius when everyone was brainwashed, or Yubel when everyone was going to be trapped in another dimension, or Dark World when everyone was going to die, or Darkness when everyone was going to die again, so the Sacred Beasts being unlocked was kinda casual. In the episode where they were released, some some pillars popped up asymmetrically in a random forest on Duel Academy Island after the villain got all 7 keys that were being guarded, and the box with the cards emerged in the center for the villain to use in a duel that he expectedly lost. It was just conveniently off to the side of the main area. I find it funny that of all the set pieces in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, the first one that got turned into a card was Indistinct Forest with Crooked Pillars, especially when the other cards made to support the Sacred Beasts, unrelated to the anime, have a lot more going on, like the dystopian gothic style of their field spell Fallen Paradise. And we eventually did get a card for the iconic Duel Academy, and even one depicting the final blow of the Sacred Beast duel, but Spirit Gates actually works with the Sacred Beast cards, so I wanted to give it some attention. As much as I goof on this somewhat bland location, I love how this card supports the Sacred Beasts, which were basically unplayable boss monsters in the real-life card game without proper support. Just like how these gates unlock the beasts in the anime, this card lets you add any of the beasts or beast support monsters to your hand, and then you can summon their support monsters from the graveyard, and you can add continuous spells to your hand which supports Hamon. It was really cool to see them get all this support when you thought they were just going to be forgotten boss monsters of the days of old. Doesn't it make you appreciate the Sacred Beasts more?
Yeah, they're okay.
Come on, you like Raviel?
No, the other ones.
Wait, what did Raviel do to you over the other two?
That one's got stuff on him.
They all have stuff on them.
He looks like he has emo on him or something.
What's that?
Like clay.
Those are just his muscles. Let him be buff. He wants to be buff. Number 6, Limit Overdrive. This is a reference to the duel against the final villain in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds when the main character Yusei had to get out the ultimate form of his Stardust Dragon, Shooting Quasar Dragon. The art mimics how Yusei was using all the synchro summoning tricks he learned up to this point as he glowed on the magical space road dueling against the Time Lords. He manages to get out all the major Signer Dragons and modify their levels with anime luck and the power of friendship so he can use them in a symbolic synchro summon. Shooting Quasar Dragon emerges and Yusei looks the happiest I've ever seen him. It's a great shot of him looking at the dragon. The card combines the shots of him riding while glowing with the dragon materializing, only having it appear behind Yusei rather than in front of him to create this image. The effect is not as complex as what happened in the anime, since getting 5 synchro monsters on the field is not an easy feat without some busted effect, but the effect does let you return 1 tuner synchro monster and 1 non-tuner synchro monster to the extra deck, referencing how all of the Quasar Dragon's materials need to be synchro monsters, and then you can special summon a synchro monster with the same combined levels as the monsters returned, ignoring its summoning conditions. And it counts as a synchro summon, so you can fulfill this artwork and summon the Quasar Dragon without having to deal with everything that makes it harder to summon normally. It's not as epic as an effect as the scene it's based on, but it's a nice reference. Honestly, the fact that this was just a common card in a structure deck feels like it's not fully doing the scene justice. I want to see this card all shiny and holographic, you know, something real cool looking. Number 5, Unity, Yugioh Friendship, and Judgment of the Pharaoh. Here's a trio of iconic things on cards. These cards were released as Shonen Jump promo cards, which is the magazine that featured the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga when it was running. So if there was any time to feature characters from the series on cards, this was it. This promo happened in 2006 and definitely felt like it was foreshadowing future nostalgic releases. These were the first spell and trap cards to clearly show characters from the manga with no ambiguity of who they were. This is clearly Yugi and his crew all around here. Similar to Symbol of Friendship, on the spells, it's all about their bonds as friends on the artwork, with some interesting effects. Unity has a more standard effect. Target one of your monsters, and it gains defense equal to the defense of the rest of the monsters that you have on the field for a turn, mimicking how the group is combining forces to do their hands together thing on the card. Yugioh Friendship, though, has a weirder effect. Just like on the art, to activate the card, you have to offer a real-life handshake to your opponent. If they accept, both your life points become half of the total life points between each player, and if you have Unity in your graveyard, they must accept the handshake.
And what if they don't?
Well then, I guess you're a jerk. Besides this card featuring Yugi and Joey on it, the combination of their names Yugioh is not only the first syllables of their names in both Japanese and English, but Yugioh is also a pun on the Japanese word for friendship, Yugioh, so this card is technically called Friendship in English. The final promo card, Judgment of of the Pharaoh, features Pharaoh Atem pointing at us, menacingly.
He's doing a finger wag, so clearly you did something wrong.
What did I do wrong?
You forgot the milk at the store.
But he didn't have a milk store.
That's what you did wrong.
This card works with the other two. You can activate either effect depending on if Unity or Yugioh is in your graveyard. Yugioh locks down monster summons and effects, and Unity locks down spells and traps. It's cool how the effect is sort of a metaphor on how the Pharaoh's trials and tribulations with Yuki's friends, shown on the spell cards, help him out with this trap. Do you think he's related to the monster card Spirit of the Pharaoh? Because if not, he's immediately overshadowed that guy's legacy by coming into the card game. Spirit of the who are you now? Number 4, Halfway to Forever, High Five the Sky, and Shining Draw. This trio of cards is grouped together because they all feature the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal protagonist Yuma just chilling on the card art. Halfway to Forever is based on the pose that Yuma and his spirit buddy Astral are doing at the end of the first Japanese theme song, Masterpiece, which is also the Japanese name for the card. Now the reason this card's name was different in English is because the second dub theme song was called Halfway to Forever, even though the visual of Yuma and Astral was only in the first season theme song, which was called Take a Chance in English. I guess Halfway to Forever just has a better ring to it. The point is, theme song reference. The card's effect supports summoning Utopia monsters, which was Yuma's main deck, so it fits the theme of the main character's theme song. The next Yuma card is High Five the Sky, which was one of Yuma's catchphrases in the dub. Just like the previous card, the Japanese card name references the Japanese equivalent to the reference, Katobingu Challenge, with Katobingu being his catchphrase in Japanese. It essentially translates to Bring It To 'em. The sub and the dub aren't that similar with this translation, but they at least have the same energy. Anyway, this card's effect lets one of your Xyz monsters attack a second time. It's an okay effect. I guess it represents Yuma's fighting spirit to push on through for that extra damage. Finally, Shining Draw shows Yuma dramatically drawing a card in reference to Shining Draw from the anime, which is the equivalent of a Miracle or Destiny draw, where Yuma uses the power of hope to draw any card he needs to win the duel, or even new cards related to his Utopia archetype that never existed before. Since this card references a Miracle Draw style effect, it works like Symbol of Friendship, where you can only activate it if you draw it as your normal draw, and then you get to use all of its strong searching and summoning effects related to Utopia. While all of these cards were more or less gimmicks that were overshadowed by better cards for Utopia decks, I appreciate that Yuma showed up to represent his archetype. Number 3, Kaiba Man. This was one of the first times we saw a character from the series appear as a monster card. It wasn't a hidden secret or ambiguous, they just put Kaiba on a card and made him a superhero with a thinly veiled disguise whose name gives it away if you don't already recognize his chin, voice, or love of dragons. Or maybe he's just a superhero who has Kaiba-themed powers, which involve, having lots of money? Perhaps it's both, and Kaiba's superpower is being Kaiba. He would think that. And Kaiba's power allows him to summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon. Who would have guessed? You can tribute Kaiba Man and special summon the dragon from your hand. I don't think this card was ever good. Maybe in Duel Links. You get a free Blue Eyes White Dragon summon with it, but only if you have it in your hand. This card was power crept by those Blue Eyes White Dragon stone eggs that came out later on that let you summon the dragons from your deck, which is infinitely better. And not to mention, the Blue Eyes White Dragon has an archetype based around it now, including these monsters that have a whole Fantasy Warriors aesthetic, making it even funnier to imagine Kaiba trying to fit in with them using the wrong outfit in his cosplay.
I love the superhero name and everything about it because he's going to his first Christmas party at his work, and he's very excited about it because it's the first one that he's throwing, and he wants to impress everyone on the staff because he's not sure if anyone likes him because they probably don't, and he wants to impress everybody. So he's like, bam, here I am, Kaiba Man. And by the way, I have beautiful long red hair now. Canteen baby.
Why would he wear a costume for Christmas and not Halloween?
I conflated those two holidays, sorry guys.
Number 2, Generation Next, Instant Contact, and Wake Up Your Elemental Hero. These cards are hype for me. Whenever the Elemental Heroes or Neospatians appear on cards, they're always doing some action poses that look like they could have been a battle shot in the manga or anime, but a lot of them are original poses for the cards or were just the card art in the anime. What can I tell ya? Jaden's ace cards always deserve to look epic. However, these 3 cards are definitely based on the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, specifically the theme or closing songs. The first one is Generation Next, which came out in 2020, about 15 years after Yu-Gi-Oh! GX was released, and I'm all here for this nostalgia bait. It's based on the first Yu-Gi-Oh! GX theme song, Fine Weather Rising Hallelujah. The very first images we see in that theme song are Elemental Hero Avian, Burstinatrix, and Clayman heroically emerging from the ocean as they fly off before Jaden, or Judai to not use the dub name, pops up to continue the cool visuals. I was about to ask why Sparkman was never included in the group of original Elemental Hero normal monsters here, but then I remembered they were just in the water and he could kill everyone. And even though the Japanese theme song is awesome, with that card name, I can't help but think about the dub theme song and go, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Generation Next, game on, get your game on. I unapologetically love that theme song. This card can special summon any Elemental Hero, Neospatian, or Karibo monster from the deck, all being monsters that Jaden played, and this is his theme song, so it fits. The next card, Instant Contact, was released in 2022, and it's based on the 3rd Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh! GX opening, Teardrop, where Neos does a bunch of cool Neos things, and then all of his original fusions pop out behind him. I like how the effect of this card mirrors the visuals, just like how Elemental Hero Neos shows up first in the theme song, followed by his Neospatian fusions. You can summon any Elemental Hero or Neospatian fusion monster from your extra deck with this card. However, just like how Neos is needed to bring out the other guys in the theme song, you need to have Neos on the field or in your graveyard, or else the monster summoned from this card has its effects negated, can't attack, and goes back to the extra deck at the end of the turn. Also, this is just a cool looking card. You have all your favorite classic Neos fusion monsters here, like Glow Neos, Grand Neos, and Redacted Neos. For context, Air Neos was at the top of the group in the theme song, but for whatever reason, this is the only monster of the group that Konami never re-released, and they never reference it in any media since it was released or shown in the anime in 2007. So as a result, Air Neos is not on this card, and it's just a blank space where he was in the theme song, but you can still kinda see his wing right here, so maybe he just floated down too much and is directly behind Neos. Finally, there's Wake Up Your Elemental Hero, which is a fusion monster, referencing a scene in the 2nd Japanese ending theme song of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Wake Up Your Heart. It's just a nice collage of Jaden jumping up with some of his monsters, minus Jaden on the card. Definitely his B team of monsters, which is good. I like to see them getting representation. Maybe Shining Flare Wingman is A tier, but he rarely brought out Necroshade. He just discarded him when he wanted to use his graveyard effect later on. And Neo Bubbleman, he's literally useless now that Metamorphosis is banned. I do like how Hero Kids appear here. I forgot about them. They had 2 support cards. Anyway, once again, this is a cool card. You can fuse an Elemental Hero and as many warriors as you want to summon this monster, with its attack rising for each warrior that you used in the fusion, in reference to the myriad of warriors on the card, Elemental Heroes and all. It's even more proof that you can always guarantee that the Elemental Heroes will bring the hype with the visuals. Normally, I'd put the honorable mentions here, but since there were over 40 great cards based on the manga and anime in some regard, we definitely have enough for another edition of this topic, so we'll cover more in the future. It's not that we forgot about your favorites, we just didn't have room on a single list. Anyway, we have one left to talk about now. For this pick, we chose the card that references one of the most absurd moments in the original manga and anime that they chose to immortalize. Number 1, Attack the Moon. This card references the Duelist Kingdom arc, when the card game was less about game mechanics and more about having you decide the rules and effects based on what you would expect the monsters to do looking at their appearance before the Battle City arc established a more consistent rule set. During this era, attack and defense was more of a suggestion, and anything goes really. Is it physically dark outside? Well, your monsters can hide in the dark. Is your monster a spellcaster? Let's have it cast a spell that takes effect after a certain time period. You see this monster that's a giant maze, now it's the field, and the game rules are different. But one of the most ridiculous things to happen during Duelist Kingdom was probably in the Yugi vs. Mako Tsunami duel, known as Ryoto Kajiki in Japanese. Mako summons a bunch of sea creatures on the water field, Yugi tries to power up his wolf by summoning the moon, it backfires when it helps control the tide of Mako's water field, and then Yugi is backed into a corner with a tiny plot of land for his giant soldier of stone. However, Yugi has one plan left. Instead of going after Mako's monsters, he switches the soldier of stone from defense to attack mode and commands him to attack the moon. This causes the tides to recede, leaving Mako's aquatic animals washed ashore and defeated. The sheer concept that Yugi had his monster attack the moon, which he summoned to begin with, has always baffled fans and been a good defining moment to summarize the loose rules of Duelist Kingdom.
That's not nice. You shouldn't do that to the moon. Sailor Moon's gonna be very upset, you know.
Team 4-Star made that joke in 2008. The effect of the card emulates the scene well. It requires a rock monster to switch battle positions, just like how Yugi had the stone soldier go into attack mode, and then it destroys a spell or trap on the field, with the moon being a spell card in both the anime and the real-life card game. The artwork is a combination of a shot from the manga and its own original design. It's based on a panel of the soldier cutting through the moon from the viewpoint of the duelists. As mentioned earlier in the video, cards based on the original series tend to use manga artwork over anime screenshots. However, the monster in the card art is actually the upgraded form of Giant Soldier of Stone, known as Giant Soldier of Steel, and he's in some sort of scrapyard instead of the ocean. Not sure why they chose to make that change, but I'm assuming they just wanted to help promote the new Giant Soldier card.
So is it the robot, but it's made out of stone now instead of metal?
No, he's just made of steel now instead of stone. However, he has an effect, so he's better than the original.
Now you're just being mean.
Final note, the Japanese name for this card is Moonscraper, but I can't find anything stating the origin of that name. In the anime, his Japanese attack name is called Rock Crush Sword, so it doesn't seem to be related to that, and in the manga and anime, Yugi basically says that he's going to attack the moon in one way or another in both the original and the dub, so I think I like the bluntness of the English name here. So for capturing the craziness of early Yu-Gi-Oh! In a reasonable card effect, Attack the Moon attacks the #1 spot. Now, what did you think? Did you know about all of these anime and manga references, or were there some that went over your head initially? With plenty more cards based on the anime, there's definitely enough for another edition of this, so let me know what you're hoping to see in the future in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.